Okay, so I was able to get the VRRoom plugged in, connected into the home theater, and was able to get it to work. At least I think I did. But with the way my rack is set up, it was almost impossible to try to give you a walkthrough of how it was set up. So I figured, for the love of all things home theater, I would bring it back out again, and then we can just do some type of visual walkthrough of what I did. So, a couple of things. This does have an on-screen display right on here. When you plug it in, it's going to show up. It's going to give you information on what is plugged in, what is going out through the HDMI out ports. It's going to give you a couple of information. It allows you to also be able to make changes on the device using one of these buttons here. I don't know if you can see it, but on this side there is a menu button that gives you access to all the menus that you can go in and make modifications, and this allows you to either exit whatever information is showing on screen here, or just kind of allows you to toggle. On the other side, you have basically up and down buttons. So whenever you're in the menu, you can use this button to go scroll up, use this button to scroll down, So for quick setup, this is what I have. I'll flip it over. So there are a couple of ports here that, HDMI ports that are available to you. Now for my setup, I don't get to use all of it. So just a quick rundown. I do have a Sony 325 ES 4K projector that is running into a Denon 4700H. And, then I have my source devices. I have the Nvidia Shield 2019. I have the AppleTV 4K, the latest version, and I have an OPPO 203 player. Now, in order for, to get this connected and working effectively, there were a couple of steps. It took me a couple of minutes, to be honest, probably an hour or two just to try to get to figure it out. And shout out to Heterate Cowboy Seymour. He has a couple of videos out there on YouTube that will give you an idea of what to do, and pretty much spells out how to get it to work well. So shout out to Jordan. Good videos out there. And there are a couple of other videos that are specific to the VRRoom. Now, one thing you will learn quickly is that this is a fingerprint magnet. So you can already see smears on there. But okay, so just to go from what I have. So now you do have this couple of ports. There's the eARC audio Arcana, which, for those who are going, I think, for sound bars, because I didn't get to use it. And then you have a HDMI TX1 downscale, the HDMI TXO axis up, the HDMI audio, and the LAN control. Now, you can control this with the on-screen display that is right here. However, if you plug it into a rack, then you're going to have difficulties, moving around and trying to play around with the menu buttons and trying to get things to connect and just to make modifications as you want. And, the fact that you're going to have cables plugged in here and have cables plugged back in here just makes it, some type of awkward fit into your rack, depending on what type of rack you have. So for me, this is just going to be a plug in and go and forget. I'm going to put it somewhere in the rack, not even the best location that I want to, but it's just going to sit there. And then I am going to be making modifications using the web browser feature. And I think that's where it's important. I like to have most of all my home theater gear connected via LAN. So if it's possible, I will recommend using Ethernet. And then you will also have to use this one. I have another HDMI cable. Now, this will be the HDMI cable that comes in from my projector. So in my actual rack, I have a VRRoom Pro fiber HDMI cable, and that goes into the HDMI TXO. So I have this plugged in. So this is my projector cable, right? And then I have one other HDMI that goes out from the HDMI audio, and I have this plugged into this port, and this cable that goes from the HDMI audio goes into an HDMI in on my receiver. So I have it going into HDMI 1. So just a quick recap. This from TX0 goes straight to my projector. This goes from my audio and plugs into an HDMI in, not out. So one of your HDMI in ports, it could be, I use HDMI 1. And then this obviously goes into my Ethernet connection. And then obviously you do have the DC, the power port, you have the RS-232, and you have the SPDIF LR, out. And then there's also an extra HDMI TX1. My understanding is that if you have a TV that you also want to get plugged in, you can use that. I'm currently not using it for my particular setup, but I think I have a couple of ideas that I will, plan to make another video for, of how exactly I can use that. So excuse the clutter here, but but I think hopefully this makes a lot of sense. So let's switch over to the front side of it. Now, this is where you're going to have your source plugged in. So I currently have 3 sources plugged in. I will have my AppleTV 4K going to HDMI 0. I have my Nvidia Shield going to HDMI 1. And then my OPPO 203 player plugged into HDMI 2. I do have an HDMI cable that runs from my office, where my PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are, and I will be testing that, but for now I have not tested it with my initial setup. So, but I believe I should be able to do that, and probably be able to game on the projector. But yeah, so let's just follow through. So you take your HDMI cable and plug it in here. So you can almost see how awkward it's going to look, right? If you have multiple cables plugged in here, multiple source cables plugged in here, you have your IR sensor plugged in, you have a port relay, you have your IR RX cable plugged in. So you basically have this device somewhere sitting in your rack looking just like this, cables everywhere. So yes, so this is my initial setup of how I have it in my rack. I was able to test it. It works just fine, and it gives me what I want, right? Which is just being able to test out the low latency Dolby Vision, which is basically, like I've said multiple times, Dolby Vision that is processed on your source device versus the full Dolby Vision, if that's the correct term, that gets processed on your display. So think of low latency Dolby Vision as great value Dolby Vision. But if you're like me, when I talked about my home theater setup that I have this connected to, my Denon 4700H is HDMI and Dolby, HDMI 2.1 and Dolby Vision capable. My source devices, with the exception of probably the Nvidia Shield, I believe the AppleTV is also HDMI 2.1, also has, and all of them do have Dolby Vision. Now, the weakest link in the chain is obviously the projector, the Sony 325 ES that supports just HDR10. And, I'm not able to get any type of Dolby Vision signal to it because it does not understand that, But this basically allows me to be able to take the Dolby Vision that comes out of my source, converts it to some type of, format or language that, my projector will understand, and sends low latency Dolby Vision to the projector. And whenever you pull up the information, you will actually see it on the display that, Dolby Vision has been triggered. So let's do a quick walkthrough of the initial setup. So once you have this plugged in, when you turn it on, you're going to get the on-screen display. It's going to give you an IP address. It's going to give you information on the input device, and it's going to give you information on what is going out from the device. So it's a couple of, and a host of other information once you play around with this. Now, it's a lot easier to use the IP, the browser, option to be able to make the same modification. So basically you take the same IP address that's provided, go into your browser, put that in, and you will have access to the entire menu function, and you can make changes from there. And those changes are, transmitted almost immediately to the device itself. So let's go, I will try to get on my computer now and show you what I got with the menu options. So I had to go plug in HD VRRoom or VRRoom back in the rack. I am on my browser right now, and I basically do have the IP address typed into browser bar. And once you do that, this is what you are going to get. So you're going to get this screen that gives you the host name, it gives you your IP address, it gives you your firmware version. I believe the 0.34 is the most up-to-date browser version. And then you have a couple of tabs on here. So the very first tab is your info tab, and it basically gives you information on your source and also your output. So in the TX0, if you remember, I believe I have my AppleTV 4K plugged in as my source on here, and you can see that it gives you a couple of information, right? So you have 4K, 59, gives you the megahertz. You can see that it's a 422 BT2020, 12 beats, low latency Dolby Vision. And the video is, I believe, my video output. It's the projector. So you can see that this is coming in from my AppleTV 4K, and this is going out to the projector. And it gives you a couple of other information, bitstream, if it's, your eARC, and you can see that it's the Sony projector. And then you can see that the receiver is a Denon receiver. Now, down below here, this is where you get to choose, if you have different ports. So I currently have my port 0 and 1 to active. So I have the Apple TV plugged into input 0, Nvidia Shield 1, and the OPPO 203 will go into input 2. And then you go into the EDID tab, which is basically the handshake protocol, or the communication that takes place between your devices. When you plug your Apple TV 4K to your receiver, that is how they know what they are and what they're capable of doing. So it looks like there's a couple of options here. You can either use one of this, but I'm just going to use this particular option, which is the custom EDID. And what this does is that it gives you a host of different default formats that you can use. Now there's like 1 to 100. Now, depending on what you're trying to achieve, in my case, right, we're trying to achieve low latency Dolby Vision being sent to the projector. So I use this custom profile, which is the Sony A1 low latency Dolby Vision. Now it's very important, for you to use this particular format because you have your projector, which is the only what would I call it now, the only device in your chain that does not support any type of Dolby Vision. It only supports HDR10. So I did notice that when I tried to use any of the other formats, I wasn't getting any pictures. Now I did watch one of Jordan's video, Hit the Red Cowboys video, and this was the option that he chose, and as soon as I tried the low latency, it worked. So if your goal is to get low latency Dolby Vision, this is going to be probably your best bet. Now, if you have some type of projector that has HDMI 2.1, I'm pretty sure there's other options that you might be able to use. But bear in mind that this is my first go at this particular device, so I have to be very careful with what I'm saying, and it's still a journey. There's so much that this stuff turns out to do that it's almost confusing, but basically this is the options that I have. I went ahead and just set all my options out to the low latency. Now with the OPPO 203 player, I believe it does support HDR10 plus, so I might be able to, try to find another option that gives me the possibility of doing HDR10 plus, but my projector, I don't believe, supports that, so I'll just stick with that. Now, when I plug in the PlayStation 5, now this is theory. I haven't tested it out. My assumption is that, because the PS5 or the Series X support, ALM, VRR, and other formats for HDMI 2.1, that I might be able to use some defaults that have ALM, VRR, and all that good, options that we have here. There's even options for 8K, there's options for 4K, 1080p, 720, 480, but that's theory. For that option, I will hope to test it out and, provide updates maybe in a different video. Now, with the audio cap, I came in here and I selected True HD and Dolby Digital, just to pick. I'm not sure how much difference it does make, if it should automatically pick that up. I really honestly don't have an idea, but that's the options that I have chosen. Now with the HDR, I haven't played around here. It does seem to auto-populate based on whatever content you're playing. This is also for Dolby Vision. You can see that it's capturing specific, metadata. There's the on-screen display option. You have your, your CC, your eARC. It does automatically select the audio system. I found out that if for the CEC, for the eARC, I found out that if I tried to use any other option outside of the manual HDMI, I was losing audio. I wasn't getting any audio. The macros, I haven't even looked at this. And then you have just your standard configuration. So this is, this gives you a lot of options, so you would probably want to use the web browser feature for anything that you want to do, especially when you have it sitting in a rack, with the design that has cables going, on both sides of the device. Now, you can also come in here, you can reboot the unit. Once you click the reboot here, it automatically reboots the device. You can export your configurations, you can import them. You can also reset the device, which is one of the best features, I would think, is that you can go around and try different options and try different things that you find. There's a couple of forums out there that I was able to find just for the VRRoom or the VRRoom. You can test out a couple of things, and if you break something, you just come in here and you just type reset and hit the reset, and it takes it back to factory settings, and you don't have to worry about that. So so this is basically what that browser interface does. It does everything that the on-screen display does, but does it better. It's much more clearer. You have much more flexibility in terms of just understanding all this stuff out here. And once you make any changes, you can hit the refresh. It automatically, right away, just goes in and just updates the device while it's sitting in your rack. So yeah, so that's what we have with the web browser feature that allows you to go in and do some control. So now I will just go back to the media room and just try to capture a few changes and just show you what I have and what this can do. I'll be right back. For the sake of testing, I have this plugged in, but what I did first was I plugged in the AppleTV 4K directly back to the receiver and the projector. So the VRRoom or the VRRoom is not in play right now, but I just wanted to go through, and just try to test out some things in the menu, right? So just go to some of the settings with the AppleTV 4K plugged in directly to my receiver. And you can see that when I go to the video format, right, there is no Dolby Vision option in the HDR format. So, and that makes sense, right? Because my projector does not, my display, which is a projector, only supports HDR10, does not support Dolby Vision. So I should not expect to get that, and I'm going to get the 420 chroma, and just checking out some of the options that we have here to see if there is any difference that I can expect. Obviously it does support ATMOS, so I will get ATMOS, but for the video format there is no Dolby Vision option. So if I'm watching anything that supports Dolby Vision and Apple TV 4K, I can expect to just get, HDR10. So this is a TV show that I was watching. It says it supports Dolby Vision, but if I were to play it, I do not expect to, I will not be getting Dolby Vision. Now, I'm not too familiar, I'm still learning my way around the Apple TV 4K, but I was wishing there was a way I could check what the input was, just to show what is being displayed. But yeah, just going by what we saw in that option, we don't even have the option to choose Dolby Vision. So I am now going to go and switch everything back and plug the Apple TV 4K into the VRRoom device, and then plug in my projector into the VRRoom device, and we will come back and check the menu options to see what we have. So I'll just leave it at this, and it will probably go off for a few seconds, but I'll be right back. So I have this plugged in, and you can see right away that the video format now gives you the option for Dolby Vision. So this is something that we did not have, and I left the screen on just so that you could see. And now we have Dolby Vision available. So now the VRRoom is sending that low latency Dolby Vision that has been processed on the Apple TV 4K and sending it to the projector. So this is not the projector processing, which would be what the full Dolby Vision is, which is basically your your LG C2 or your Sony TV. Samsung doesn't have Dolby Vision, but processing it. But in this case, this is the Apple TV. If you have an Nvidia Shield or if you have the OPPO 203 player, I would assume that that's the same thing that will be going on. So now that we have it, we have Dolby Vision selected. We can go back out. You can check the audio. We still have ATMOS available. And now we can go back to, we can go back to this, and you can see, you're probably not able to see it at the bottom of the screen, but I'll try to zoom in while editing the video. You can see the green display at the bottom shows that it's 4K. I was talking too slow, but it went. But basically, once you start playing, you are basically now sending signals. So it's 4K, 59, you can see 422 BT 2020, 12-bit low latency Dolby Vision 2.2. And you can see that the audio is the high bit rate that is being sent to the projector. So there you have it. And if I were to go back to the computer and to check, it probably will be showing you that if I were to go back to the browser and just take a look and see what type of information is being sent through. But yeah, there you have it. The low latency Dolby Vision being sent to the display projector. Now there's a bunch of other amazing things that this device seems to be capable of doing. But my focus has just been primarily on the low latency Dolby Vision. Now, in terms of change in the picture quality that I get, I have not properly tested that, but yes, there's a difference in the signal being sent to the projector now. It's not, it's taking that low latency Dolby Vision and it's wrapping it in some type of way that the projector understands. So it's probably taking an HDR10 wrapper and placing it around the low latency Dolby Vision metadata, and then the projector is being able to process that. In terms of video quality, upgrades, I will have to take some time and properly do some comparison. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge having to connect and disconnect, plug in the Apple TV, directly to the AVR and then going through the VRRoom. So I will be testing this out, making sure that I have it properly tested. And then, I can have a couple of videos come out, doing some type of comparison. So I hope this was not as complicated as I found the process to be. And hopefully, if you decide to go down the journey of the HDFURY, the VRRoom, and they have a bunch of other options. The Arcana, I believe there's a DVR option, that this video would help just give you some type of insight on what you're getting into. So please don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you.